Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here. And today we're talking about a ship that, in my opinion, has one of the coolest features about it in this game that, unfortunately, not many ships in the game have. Now we're talking about the Tier 8 Premium American Battleship, the Alabama. And the cool feature about this ship is that you can go to the real Alabama in real life, in Mobile, Alabama, and see the ship in real life, walk on the decks, take a tour of it, explore all around the ship. Then you can come back to the game and play the ship in game after having seen the thing in real life. It really makes you appreciate the scale of these ships and such. And the Alabama is one of the best preserved museum ships here in the United States. I've been to quite a few of them, and I do have to say the Alabama, so far from what I've seen, it's just the best in terms of its preservation and the amount of open deck space. Not only deck space on the deck and on some of the interior decks, but you can go to just about every part of the ship, including inside the barbettes of, I believe, turret number, I can't remember if it's 2 or 3. They've opened that up for the public to go and tour, and it's very cool. You can go all the way down in there and seeing how the interior and the loading mechanisms and just all that is crazy to me to see how these machines really work. And plus, in Game 2, she's a very, very, very good ship still today, and the subject of today's I'll look back at video. Now, the Alabama is actually quite old in the game. She came out back in 2017. So this ship is unlike the what did we look at, the Yamato the other day, which is 6 years old. This ship is a mere 4 years old in the game, about to be 5, because 2022 is right around the corner. And speaking of seeing the Alabama in real life, I have 2 videos on that. I wouldn't really recommend watching the first one. I had a really crappy camera for that. Second one was for Anchors Away 2 years ago. That feels like that was like freaking yesterday. But I'm planning on going back and visit some of these museum ships with the better camera equipment that I have now and update these videos and such. Probably once the summer gets here. That's probably going to be my summer plans for this summer. So be on the lookout for those around, I don't know, 6 months from now. But anyway, the Alabama in-game. Another cool thing about the Alabama is that she was the first high-tier American battleship you could outright buy. Well, premium battleship you could outright buy if you don't include the Missouri, because you couldn't really outright buy the Missouri. You had to at least convert the XP first, which means you had to convert 750,000 free XP, and that was a much taller order back then than it is today. So the first high-tier American premium battleship in the game, well, again, you could buy outright. How has she done over the years? So we're going to go through her stats and her features and my build on it here in a moment. Again, many of these stats that I'm going to read off, it is with my build equipped, which I'll show you again right here. Also should have appeared at the beginning of the video, unless editing Mountbatten fell asleep or something. But anyway, so the Alabama. Her armor is actually, well, pretty darn good. And this was a point of contention during her testing. During her testing, her citadel was high and above the waterline, very similar to the South Carolina, North Carolina, which if you've played the North Carolina or played against the North Carolina, you know that it is quite the squishy ship when it comes to its citadel. But the trade-off for that is that it has, great Sigma at 2.0 Sigma at Tier 8 with 16-inch American guns. But the Alabama citadel is nice and below the waterline, which means that it's very difficult to blap this ship at close range, which then leads to a pretty comfortable ship at close to medium range in terms of an American battleship. Now, being the Alabama is a South Dakota, the Massachusetts is also a South Dakota. Another cool thing about the Alabama. During testing, we got the Massachusetts out of the Alabama. A variant of the Alabama during testing was a secondary American battleship. And they decided to put the Alabama out as is and then release the Massachusetts, which is the same class as the Alabama, but with a secondary focused theme about it. That's how we got the very, 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 very awesome and very, very good Massachusetts. See, this ship is all just, it's just a great, great amount of awesomeness, ain't it? So anyway, with the citadel being below the waterline, It's a lot better at playing in close. You can almost play this as a heavy cruiser. But besides that, it is, of course, wrapped in 32 millimeters of armor. Its mid-deck, though, is 38 millimeters of armor. Although with the ships that the Alabama will be going up against today, that's not a terrible amount of improvement over the 32 millimeters of its bow and stern. Now, in terms of survivability, this is another cool thing about the Alabama. 63,300 hit points and 49% torpedo damage reduction. At the time of release, the Alabama had the second highest torpedo damage reduction rate in the game. I still believe today it still does. The Yamato has 55% torpedo damage reduction. And I believe the Musashi has the same as the Yamato. So 49% torpedo damage reduction, that is awesome for a ship that's meant to push in. Many of the battleships that we have that are brawlers, quote unquote, like the Germans, for example, have absolutely terrible torpedo protection. We're talking about 23-24% torpedo damage reduction at tier 10, which with some tier 10 torpedoes like the Shimikazes, it doesn't really matter. You're going to lose a quarter of your health just to 2 torpedoes anyway. But with the Alabama, you get that nice 40% torpedo damage reduction, which means that, especially when you're talking about aerial drop torpedoes, you can almost ignore those altogether. Now, her main feature, her 3x3 16-inch guns, her 9 16-inch guns. These are some really sweet guns. They are, well, the American 16-inch guns, and we talked about these guns quite a bit over the past couple of weeks with some of the ships that we've looked at. So they reload in 30 seconds. They have a 180 time with the build that I have on it of 32 seconds, which is really nice. Maximum dispersion, again with the build that I have on it, it's 305 meters because my maximum range on this ship is out to 24.5 kilometers. More on that in a minute. The HE shells have a maximum damage of 5,700 and a 36% chance of causing a fire, and they can pin 68 millimeters of armor, and they come out the barrels at 803 meters a second. Her AP, again super heavy American AP, does a maximum damage of 13,100 and comes out the barrels at a very slow 701 meters a second, because just like the North Carolina and the Kearsarge and the Massachusetts, these are the 45 caliber guns, not the 50 caliber guns that the Iowa and Montana get, so the shells are quite slow. And it does the same thing like we talked about before in terms of its performance, where because the shells are moving a bit slower, a lot slower than other tier 8 battleship shells, they don't overpin as much as you would get with like let's say, definitely a lot less than, let's say, the frickin' Lenin with its Soviet velocities, where it'll, you can shoot a cruiser right in the middle of its citadel because the shells are 16-inch shells and they're moving out of the barrels at a much quicker pace than 701 meters a second. They'll go right through the citadel without detonating. But because the shells are traveling so slower, they will pin a lot more than your typical 16-inch gun would. Now, it's not quite, again, to the levels of like the Lion with its short fuse British BB AP, but it's still quite good, and you'll find yourself chunking cruisers a lot more in the Alabama, Massachusetts, North Carolina, and Kearsarge than you would in, let's say, a counterpart of them with a higher shell velocity. On top of that, too, the Alabama has 1.9 Sigma, so a notch down from the North Carolina's 2.0 Sigma. And with the dispersion of these guns, it's not as good as the North Carolina, and since it is a tier 8 battleship, you cannot equip the special American Artillery Platoon Mod 2 module, which decreases your dispersion by 11%, and since it is an American battleship, you cannot mount the Aiming Systems Mod 1 module on it to rein in that dispersion. So yeah, you can't really do much to control that. Now, when Deadeye was a thing, the ship was pretty sweet. But Deadeye's not a thing anymore, so yeah, the guns are really pretty consistent. It does have the American battleship dispersion ellipse. You'll get salvos that are really, really nice. You'll get some that are really, really, really frustrating, but most of them will fall more along the lines of the pretty nice side. And you should be seeing that in the footage you're watching in the background. Now, of course, with a 701 meter a second velocity, the ship is not that great at long range, and you might be wondering, well, why do you have the range module on your Alabama if the shells aren't great at long range? Well, not much point in putting the turret rotation module on the ship because the turret's already 180 in 32 seconds, which is plenty fast enough. No real point in putting the secondary battery module on here either, because it's not the Massachusetts. And I mean, I could put the AA guns mod on here, but all that's going to do is tone down my priority AA sector prep time, which doesn't really help out too much. So I figured, hey, it's a tier 8 ship. It's going to get up tier to tier 10 a lot. Why not at least have the range to at least throw the shells in the general direction of those higher tier ships? So that's why I did that. Speaking of secondaries, you get the standard American 5-inch secondaries. Same secondaries on the, well, same caliber and overall like historical type as you will find in Massachusetts, but of course they don't have the range nor the reload time of the Massachusetts. They reload in 6 seconds. They have a 6.9 kilometer base range, but really not really much to speak about there. AA is where the Alabama really does shine. Now, back in the day, a CV player would not dare go within the same zip code as an Alabama for fear of simply brushing into its AA and losing all of its planes. That's not so much the case nowadays. It's still one of the stronger AA ships. She has an A rating of 84, which by tier 8 standards is, pretty darn good. She has 52 20mm Oerlikons, and then she has 12 of the quad-mounted Bofors, so she has 48 Bofors. And then, of course, the 5 inches do also contribute to the AA, and it does have a pretty decent range at 5.8 kilometers. And sure, you could build into that, but as we all know, AA nowadays isn't really what it used to be. Maneuverability, she's pretty maneuverable. She has a pretty tight turning circle radius for a tier 8 battleship. She does go 28.9 knots with the speed flag equipped. She has a 710 meter turning circle radius, a 15.3 second rudder shift time. Consumables on this ship is also very good. This gets down to 12.7 kilometers, which is really freaking stealthy for a tier 8 battleship. So all this added together, and with, I almost forgot to go over her consumables. You get fighter, spotter, or the hill. Well, no, fighter, spotter, and the hill, and the damage con. It does have the very nice American battleship damage con, active for 22 seconds. And of course, for those 22 seconds, no fires or floodings will be started. And it reloads in 76 seconds. It has the American battleship repair party consumable. You get 379 HP back per second. It's active for 30.8 seconds, and it cools down into 76 seconds. So you don't get the nice, fast repair party that you get on the Massachusetts, where it's back in 38 seconds, but it's still a pretty darn good repair, and with a pretty decent repair cooldown time as well. So, overall, the Alabama, with all of this loveliness added onto it, she is a very good battleship for playing at medium to close range, and unlike the North Carolina, where if you push in, you might fly too close to the sun per se and eat crap from. And the thing about the North Carolina too is you don't even really need really punchy guns to really punish North Carolina. That's how high up its citadel is. She didn't get the special treatment when pretty much almost all of the high-tier American battleships got their citadels lowered. She was the exception to that rule. The ships play very similar, but you can afford to be more aggressive in the Alabama because of that lowered citadel. And it really does make such a huge difference that that citadel is just lowered that much. I mean, of course it does. But you can be more aggressive. You can support your team a lot more. The good AA also means that you get to be the AA barge for your team. Now, again, it's not like back in the day where you will be completely wiping out squadrons by yourself. But the Alabama, coupled with another AA ship, can easily just deter most CV players from attacking you. And even if they don't get dissuaded by your AA, and let's say you have like a kid in an Alabama would be an absolute no-fly zone for most CVs. And even if they did want to strike you, going through your AA would utterly devastate their planes, and you would probably take almost half of the flight with them. She's still a very good ship today. She has those very nice American battleship guns with a 16-inch super heavy AP with the slow velocity that, again, at shorter range is great. You will be dunking on cruisers and battleships at that range. Now, battleships, of course, the pin is still, of course, there on the battleships, but, of course, with less velocity comes a little bit less penetration, which is a good and bad thing, like we said, with the cruisers. Now, again, it's not like crazy like the British BBAP where you won't be citadeling battleships. You will citadel plenty of battleships with these guns, but at longer ranges, it's you got to give it quite the lead at longer range. And again, would I be necessarily running the 24-kilometer range on the ship if there was a better module to put in that that module slot? Probably not, but I just do it because, again, what am I going to put? A turret rotation mod and get like 20-something second turret rotation time on the ship? You don't really need that, but it is nice that you can get the guns out to that range, so when you do see those high-tier matches, you can at least participate in the early stages of the game rather than sitting there just waiting for the game to progress to a point to where you can get in close. But overall, for a ship that's quite old, it still does quite good, because again, like we've seen in several ships in this series, there's no real gimmick here. It's just a ship with a certain armor scheme layout that's slightly different from the North Carolina, with a couple of different tweaks here and there, and just that little bit of tweaking allows it to be played in an entirely different way that's more aggressive, more fun in my opinion. North Carolina's a lot more about sniping and battle tanking. With the Alabama, you can afford to bring that third turret into the fight a lot more than you can with the North Carolina, where if you show any amount of side, you're going to get citadeled by something, especially if you're in a tier 10 game. And the Alabama is one of the ships in this game where I don't really care what tier I'm at, because it does well at tier 8, does well at tier 9, does well at tier 10. Now, are you going to be leading the leaderboard at tier 10? With some of the matches I got trying to record this video, you will be, but on a regular basis, no, you won't. And the Alabama is still today a very, very, very good choice for an American Battleship Commander trainer. She's a fantastic ship, like I said, does well at all tiers, and is still hanging in there quite well today. And again, like I opened up with this video, it's very cool to see the ship in this game. Then you can go, if you're passing through Alabama on I-10, you will pass by Battleship Memorial Park, and you can see the ship in real life, which again is just so super cool to me. And it's even cooler that it is a ship that is performing well in game, and one that's still viable in 2021. Alright guys, let me know what you guys think about the Alabama in the comments down below. Again, it's got my seal of approval. If I had to give this ship a rating out of 10, I'd give this ship like an 8 out of 10. The only thing holding it back really being is its slow shells at range, because again, firing at range of the ships is a pain. And I'm not even talking about 24 kilometers. Those shots are again for the opening stages of tier 10 games, or the closing stages of tier 10 games, when you just have to try and shoot whatever target is you try and shoot at that range. But even past like 17, 18 kilometers, you do have to give it plenty of lead. But for medium range in, you'll be okay. Other than that, really, I mean, it's a really solid ship. Again, I would recommend you guys pick it up if you're thinking about buying a American high tier battleship. For whatever reason, especially for commander training, it's still fantastic for that. Good AA barge, really tough ship. A nice little different playstyle from North Carolina. If you're tired of playing North Carolina, you want to play something a little bit more aggressive in the American Battleship family. But anyway, guys, let me know what you guys think about the ship in the comments down below. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure to drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. One way to 35,000 subs. Now, I'm recording this video on Sunday, which means in tomorrow's video, the first winner of the giveaway will be announced, because I will be selecting the winner tomorrow. I record these videos a day or two in advance, so they lag behind a little bit. But anyway, guys, keep your eyes and ears open for that to see if you guys won the competition. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and I hope to catch you guys in the next one.